Welcome to the Homefront Podcast, hosted by me, Becca Bookman. The Homefront Podcast aims to introduce you to the people, initiatives, and ideas shaping Israel from within. War is a real matter of life and death. We are worried about our country, our nation, and our loved ones. At a time like this, talking about business can feel secondary, but it is crucial. On today's episode, I'm joined by Michal Kaye, CEO of MK Creative Coaching. She empowers female business owners, and we're going to be talking about how the war has impacted them and how they have increased their resilience. Without further ado, I'm very excited to say, welcome to the show, Michal.
Hi, thank you.
Michal, how's your Zionism doing today?
Oh, that's a really hard question. That concept of Zionism, it's more amidst Israel. It's like, I love Israel. And it's just more now. It's just everything. You're just like, I can't even explain. Like, it's every single being. And I always was like that because this was always where I felt at home. This was always like my makom, my space. But even more now. Like, I can't ever imagine leaving. Like, it would have to be some really big deal, as in they've got us to go from the river to the sea, that I would ever leave. Right? Like, that would be the only reason.
You've been on a journey throughout the war over the last number of months that we've been at war. Tell us what your journey has been.
Well, the irony is like my brother was here from the States, so I had like an extra 3 weeks with them, and it was so interesting to watch tourists deal with the war. Like, my sister-in-law didn't understand why Sushi Rechavia, you couldn't sit down. Like, there were no tables because you couldn't sit outside because just in case there was going to be a siren. Like, it just didn't dawn on her. And I'm like, how do you not understand? But I was like, well, she doesn't know because we've been dealing with this for so long and now it's really happened. So we know the rules. Like, I didn't know it was a stay-at-home order on October 7th. And we just walked to town to our families to another meal. And then came home. I had no idea it was a stay-at-home order.
To be fair, nobody knew it was going on October 7th.
No. We knew because, like, my neighbors were not Shomer Shabbat. So, like, we could have, they were like, okay, so I think Hamas has invaded. I'm like, what? It was shock. And then it was like, WTF? Like, really? What's going on? And then we didn't do anything. And then it was just like funeral after funeral after funeral and hearing more and more stories. And I'm going to say this. I'm on antidepressants. And thank God I'm on antidepressants. It took me 6 months to cry.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, and I don't think that was antidepressants. I was just like, I think that shock.
We're all in shock.
Yeah. Like,
did the relief of crying make you feel better?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. And you also think like, oh, Yom HaZikaron's not going to be worse. Like, we've just been dealing with this. It's just going to be like the day before. Nope. It was like times 300, and now we're dealing with that feeling from Yom HaZikaron. Like, that feeling stayed. We haven't gone back a day before. We're with the Yom HaZikaron feeling.
Maybe that's the heaviness I'm feeling.
Yeah, that's what I've talked to a lot of people because we're all like in shock that we could be that it could be harder, right? But it is. It's much harder now. It's like we thought, okay, you go through Yom HaZikaron, we're gonna be like our Memorial Day, like it's sad, but it was way harder for everyone.
And part of the journey that you've been on is that you've been volunteering.
Yes.
And you've also been addressing how do we get back to business.
Yes, I volunteered a lot and I realized, and too much to the point where my business was suffering. On one hand, my business saved me because it gave me something to do after October 10th. And I'll say this even after October 7th, but you know what I mean? Like checking in on everyone and making sure everyone's okay and just saying like, when you're ready to get back, I'm here. People did keep some of their calls. So we were able to address it, especially because it was like, okay, someone in the events industry was hair and makeup person. She lost her entire income. And I was like, oh, it's Corona on crack. I remember this.
Let's rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell people what you do so that then we can add context to how it played out in October 7th and the war.
So during Corona, I opened my own, my second business. I'm a business mindset coach for creative women entrepreneurs. What is a creative woman? It's someone who has a creative mind. So that's kind of like a graphic designer, an interior designer, a photographer, a hair and makeup person. All those things. I come from the events industry. I had a very successful events planning business, of which you were one of my clients. for 14 years. And I went through Corona and I was like, I need to make sure that I'd gone through Sogeitan, I'd gone through Corona, and I was like, I don't want to be in a situation where I don't have another form of income again. And I realized that I'm really good at coaching and I'm really good at helping people. And it's why I went into event planning. So this switch was a very easy switch for me. And it turns out I'm really good because I've been really coaching my vendors for years and not realizing. And I'm like, no, you need to charge more. Like that was my thing. Um, so in that, I switched to the business mindset coach. Creative brains, we're very creative, but the business side of things, we're really bad with. And so we build and we build and we build, but we forget about the business side. And all of a sudden we're like, wait, taxes, wait, receipts, wait, marketing, all of those things that the business side, what we call the working on. We're really good at working in our business. We're not so great at working on our business. And so that's a lot what I work with. Also limiting beliefs and mindset issues. We don't think we can charge that much. We don't think we're worthy or we're value for our money. And so you have a lot of people who could be making a lot more money, but not. So we work on that. And majority of my clients are making a lot more money. Actually, yeah.
Congrats to them.
Yeah, thanks God. Yeah.
So October 7th hits.
Yes.
And you have clients that you're already working with.
Yes.
New and old, I'm assuming.
Here and in the States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of differences.
Yeah.
So what happened to female businesses during the war?
We froze. We froze. Every single person froze because it was that shock. And by the way, even in America, because she's Jewish, and she froze. So everyone was like, they could not work at least for the first 2-3 weeks. And then we were all volunteering, right? So it was like, well, we don't have time to work. And the ones that were really affected the most were the people in the events industry. And we worked pretty much in the beginning. One of my clients had to cancel because she had a funeral because she found out one of her friends was killed in Nova. So again, it's like all these little things, affect every single part of it. And then her brother was in Miluim. So every part of our lives was affected. Whereas the someone in America, she was dealing with Hasbara, right? She had family in Israel. How is everyone? Is everyone accounted for? So that just not being able to work, like how do you turn up online? How do I start talking about business coaching when we're still finding bodies? Like how, for being that descript, but like how, right? When we're still burying our boys and
so
our
how
girls.
did you do it?
We didn't. I gave everyone like some time. And we still had the calls because we had to deal with the emotions. And because I didn't want to be in a situation where when they were ready to come back, that we hadn't talked the entire time, right? So we kept talking. I kept checking in on them. Like I do a lot of WhatsApp coaching. I can't say what's up, so whatever. So I kept checking in on them to make sure they were okay. The ones who, so we all volunteered to the point for me, my business suffered. And at a certain point, I think it must have been the beginning of November. We were pretty organized. I was working with housing families from Nativot. And so pretty much everything was sort of calming down. People were here already. And I was like, oh, wait. And I have a coach, right? And she was still there. We all knew what we needed to do, just be there for everyone. And I was like, all right, I need clients. I need to pay my bills. I need to pay rent, right? I'm single. I support myself completely. There is no one else. And the government wasn't helping out at that point. And not really helping out at all, but whatever. And I had to set the example. I had to put that foot in and go, yeah, it's okay to promote your business online. It's okay. You're allowed to turn up for yourself. You can still do the Hasbara stuff. You can still post the Instagram post and share this and talk about it and talk about your feelings. But you have to come back to work now, right? Because you need to put money in the bank because no one else is.
Were you the one telling your clients it's time to come back to work? Or were they...
No, I told them to come back. I was like, guys, I'm coming back to work. It's November. I'm going to respect you if you need a little bit more time. But in my opinion, it's okay. we need to work for our sanity. And I said it's like everyone who, when we talked about being sameach, when we talked about being happy, right? Or keep going with our life. Like everyone's there and they're fighting. And we're like, how do you just continue on? I'm like, because we get to, right? We get to work. We don't want to work, but we get to work. We get to go out to a restaurant. Like I remember I went out to a restaurant with a friend. I'm like, you were here during the Gulf War. Could you do this? And she's like, no. But I'm like, we didn't have phones. So you didn't know what was going on. So you had to sit in front of CNN and be like, okay, there's a Scud missile coming. Now we go in our room. I remember from my grandma. But I was like, we get to. So if we get to do all of that, then we get to come back to work. And we get to talk about our business. And we get to make money. Because we had to make money to give more donations. So it was very much like I came back and then with my coaching clients, it was very much like, okay, guys, it's time to come back. And for the ones that didn't have work, the event planner and the hair makeup, it was like, okay, what can we do to create opportunities for you? And we figured it out. And I said to pretty much everyone, we can't do right now 7-8 hours sitting and working. Like we just can't. They can't sit for that long, right? Even anyone who was working in an office couldn't sit for that long. So it was like, all right, I was like, let's do this. I'm committing to working 4 hours a day. What are you all capable of doing? And they're like, probably about 3 hours. I was like, okay, fine. So I'm like, do 1 hard thing and 2 easy things in those 3 hours, right? Make a list of everything you need to get done. Right? We've got a month left of the year, 2 months left of the year. So let's work out everything you need to get done before the end of 2023. And then break each step down. And then do 1 hard and 2 easy. And if you finish those within the 3 hours, add another easy thing. Not another hard thing. Just do 1 hard. And then the following one, you'd add half an hour. And another hard thing. So 2 hard things, 2 easy things. And again, if you get it done in time, we had another easy thing. And that's what we want. And by the time we got to the end of December, we were back to the 6-7 hours of sitting there. Right? When we were back to planning 2024, which we did in January, everyone was sort of back. Now, the mindset and the limiting beliefs was the other thing we had to deal with.
Okay, tell us more.
So it was like, great, we're back, but how do you stay back? How do you keep that train going, right? How do you keep getting up in the morning and turning up for yourself when you don't really want to, when there's just so much going on the news, right? I think at that point we went in. When your husband's not around or you have friends whose kids aren't around and whatever it is, right? It's just so much going on. But I realized that the ones that I had worked with so much on their mindset and their limiting beliefs prior to October 7th had such an easier time to come back to work. They could forgive themselves for wanting to work, right? The ones who still had those mindset and limiting beliefs, yes, so their industry wasn't working. But that doesn't mean you stop, right? There's so many things you can do in your business when it's not busy. Whether it's plan your income, work on your finances. Yes, it's scary. There is no money coming in. Okay, but there are other options, but you have to talk about it. But if you're not leaving to talk about work because all you want to do is just volunteer and volunteer and volunteer, then nothing's going to ever happen for you. So the ones that I realized that we had worked on mindset and limiting beliefs prior October 7th, it was much easier for them to come back because they could forgive themselves for wanting to get back. They forgave themselves from actually wanting to earn a salary. Because in some ways we had to forgive ourselves from working.
Let's discuss that a bit further, because for somebody who maybe wasn't in Israel, what were we forgiving ourselves for?
I think we were forgiving ourselves for working, like just getting back to regular life, right? I think my mother said to me the other day, she goes, why aren't you going out? Why aren't you doing this and this and this? And I was like, well, because I don't feel like going out at night. Right? It was like a week after, Yom HaZikaron. I don't feel like going out. But I'm going out for lunch with friends and I'm going out for coffee. I'm still going out. I'm just not going out. And we have gone out. We have been happy at occasions. But it still feels weird. it's like we're really in a mourning period, right? And I feel like we're still in the first year of the mourning period. We had the first, you had the shloshim, you had the 30 days, and then, but we're in 8 months. This isn't over. Our people are still there, right? There's this, we feel, guilty to go on because there's so many people who can't go on. My friend lost her son, and it took her, I think, 3 months to send me a message back. And I just said, like, listen, I'm here for you, whatever you need. And she was like, I know, thank you, like, whatever. And then I said, just so you know, like, where my brother does a shir, he sends a voice note to all of us about Malachim in lieu of your son, like in memory of your son, because his grandmother was my brother's Navi teacher. And my brother fell in love with Navi because of his grandma. And his grandma's still alive. And I told my friend this, and she's like, oh my gosh, you just like made my day. And it's like, we're still in this. She lost her son. She's never, like, there are people, everyone's different. We know there are people who are going out and building this and building that. And then there are people who just can't get out of bed every day, right? But we get to. And there's this guilt of we get to keep going, And that's pretty much, I think that was really what we all felt.
This is one of the hardest things of creating space for life on the home front to continue while the front lines are still defending the country.
Yeah. It's like we're supposed to go out for coffee because my friend who's in Miluim, it's his coffee shop. So we need to go by and go drink coffee, right? We need to go to a restaurant like Tipsy's. He's in and out of Miluim, and his family's just trying to keep his new business open, right? We need to go there. It's good food, but we need to go there because we need to support those people who aren't there. I mean, I can't imagine. There's so many businesses that have closed. We don't even know that. Like, I know the stories. I've heard the stories.
Maybe you can share a little bit because I'm not sure everyone is aware of how much the business sector has been impacted by the war.
So it's interesting. I was talking with my friend whose husband is back and forth to Gaza. He had to close the door because he went to Miluim. And not even that, his wife was an employee. And basically, he shut his doors because he keeps going back to Gaza. And he can't run his business. So he's done now. Like, that's it for him. And you see stores. You see lots of stores, like Sagol, closed for Miluim. That means they're not making money. They're not earning anything. A lot of people are already back, so they're trying to get it back up. But there are a lot of people we have a lawyer in our networking group who's literally been gone the whole time. I don't know if he's back. I think he's back, but he hasn't come back to networking. And he was a lawyer, so his entire business shut down when he was there. And sometimes you can come back and you can sign a document or two, but you're not earning a living.
One of the things I think is important to highlight is that when you are service-based, your clients don't wait for you to come out of reserves.
Listen, there are some people who have loyalty to people, but like if you're a catering company and you're not there to cater because you're in Gaza or you're up north, then you're not earning a living, right? Because someone needs to book a bris or someone's having a wedding or a bar mitzvah. They're not waiting for you to come back from Miluim so that you can cater it. So you lose the business, right? If you're selling items and you are there, right? You don't. Like, and we've heard the stories, of construction workers that they were there. And so they didn't have any staff. If you don't have any staff employees, how are you keeping the business going? And we're not even talking about the people who have evacuated, right? We're not talking about the 75,000 people who've been evacuated from the north or the people from the south that were evacuated and how did they make a living, right? The people who had stores in Sderot and it closed, or now the people who have stores in Kiryat Shmona that have been like 8 months without work.
We can't solve everybody's problems on the podcast.
No, we cannot.
So one of the things that struck me in what you've been saying is that as a business coach, you had a lot of foresight and strategic thinking of how to help your clients. Yes. And nobody prepares a coach for wartime. So how did you get there with your clients?
COVID. My accountant said that this was COVID on crack. Like, he said it. That in some ways, everything we learned about lockdown, about things, just businesses not running, we were all at home. You couldn't do anything, especially like I was in the events business. Like, there were no events, and I'm a good Canadian girl, and I hated doing anything illegal. I can tell you the first time I did like an illegal wedding, I'm like, the police are gonna come. Like, literally, I was petrified. I was like, I'm such a good Canadian law-abiding person. but it taught me of resilience, and it taught me one of my things about, I guess, my brain is I figure things out. So because I have a brain that figures things out, I can look at someone's business and be like, okay, what do we need to work on to make more money, to get better organized, to have more systems, to work on your marketing? Like, what are the things that we need to do? Because every business is different and every creative business owner works in a different way. So because I went through COVID and because I had to reinvent myself during COVID, I literally pivoted, right? During COVID. When it came to the war, it was like, okay, we didn't have as much emotional part in COVID. It was emotional. I mean, you went through a lot of emotions, but in the sense of just this, it wasn't, everyone was dealing with, because there were people who were still working during COVID. It wasn't like 100% of people weren't working. Like literally October 7th, the next day, no one was working.
It was impossible to get.
Like you just, and people were like really for 2 to 3 weeks were like nothing. Everything was closed. Like restaurants were closed. Everything was closed, So all of a sudden everyone was in the same boat. And so I was like, okay, let me take the powers that I learned from COVID of getting through when things are not working and then be able to help my clients. Those experiences that I had during COVID of, I guess, survival or reinventing myself or finding ways to create income out of nothing helped me with my clients.
And you used the word pivot earlier.
Yeah.
So how much are people today pivoting or just adapting their businesses to wartime?
Adapting. I think most people are adapting. I think at the beginning we did pivot. We offered different options. Like one of my clients, I was like, she's an event planner. I was like, put together a Hanukkah box. And then what someone buys one, then one goes to middle-income families. Like do it like that. And first of all, yes, she's like, I didn't really want to use the war card. I'm like, use the war card. Use the war card. It's okay. We're allowed to use the war card. Like, of all the things, use it. And she sold and she made a really nice profit. And she did it with another business owner. So she helped them and she helped herself. And that was pivoting. And she was like, I'm never going to do this again. But she got income in her bank account because we pivoted. Right. But now she's back to event planning. So for that time, and I also wanted her to keep busy. So I was like, okay, this is what we have to do for her to keep busy so she can keep momentum up, so she can start making sales calls for when events do come back. And so that's an example. So it was coming out of the box and thinking of things to do with people who weren't necessarily doing the things in their actual industry.
For female entrepreneurs and female creatives, how has the war specifically affected them and their businesses?
In their mindset and their limiting beliefs, it was very much like one, it was how do we turn up that guilt? How do we turn up? How do we post online about our businesses? How do we promote ourselves? It's inappropriate. And I was like, no, it's not. We need to earn a living. It's not inappropriate. And there are ways to do it in a way that you can make it appropriate. So there was that, or I'm in tourism, or my clients aren't here, or there's no events. How the heck am I going to, right? Like, what do I need to do to create abundance if my business isn't even functioning, if there isn't anything going on in this country, right? So it was all of that, right? And it's like, you get stuck. You go into freeze mode. I did a webinar on it. And you go into freeze mode and you don't know how to move forward and you get stuck. And you're like, you just literally stare at a screen, and we've all done it. And even when you have your own job, like when you work for someone, you still get that freeze mode where you just stare in front of the computer, or you find every single thing to do in your house that has nothing to do with your business. Oh, I'm going to do the laundry. Oh, I'm going to wash up. And I hate washing up. I will wash up if it means not sitting down and writing this email sequence, because I hate writing email sequences, or I felt I couldn't do them. Right. Thank you, ChatGPT. But it's those things, and you get stuck and you can't move forward, and you're like, so you either go back to bed or you go do every single thing else except for actually work on your business. And that's what's happened, right? You go volunteer and you keep volunteering because you're like, I'm not busy. I don't have work. Well, if you're going to volunteer all the time, you're not working on your business. So if you're not working on your business, then how do you create opportunity and abundance? And so that was a huge, huge amount of time that we spent for every single person. Even myself, I had to do it too.
What strikes me is that we had another guest on this show who was talking about the experience of females being employed, particularly when they're the wives of IDF soldiers, and what that employee-employer relationship looked like, and it wasn't always good.
Nope.
So what's interesting is that now we're talking about women who actually own the businesses and decide how they run.
Yeah. And it still was hard. It still was hard for them to do it. It was, yeah, they're like, I will do every single thing else except for actually do the thing that will actually put money in the bank. I will, and not only that, I will do things, even if I'm making money, I will do things that are not even connected to my industry. I was like, okay, if you want to do a full pivot like I did, that's great, but we're not talking about a full pivot here, right? If you want to become a baker, then let's become a baker, right? If you want to, I don't know, work in a sorting center, then let's figure out how we turn that into a business. But don't keep volunteering or doing things that are just not relevant to your business, because then you're actually doing a disservice to yourself. I'm not saying we shouldn't volunteer, because we've all volunteer, and I still volunteer, right? Or I think we give more money now than volunteering, because there's less. Now we have people coming on missions and they volunteer for us. But there are people who still go down and pick fruit. They're still giving back. You can still do that, but not 24/7. Not at the expense of your own business. You just put something aside that you love so much and that you're really good at, because you can't see a way out of it. And when you have a coach, you have that person who's helping you see the way out of it.
Let's say I don't have a coach, and there's another historic earthquake that happens, a pandemic, a war, something we don't see coming. How do we get ourselves out of that shock in terms of business?
That's a good question. I think it's little steps. I talk a lot about, you can have your ambitions, and you need to have your action steps, and you need to break down those action steps into little things. And it could be, okay, this morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to go for a walk, and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write my gratefuls and my journals. It could be that simple, is to break each task down to the littlest thing, because they get easy when they're little. They're not hard. Right? It's like when you break every single thing down, it's like you break every single task down to the littlest point. Could be buying pens, buying highlighters, because highlighters help you. Like, everyone loves a Post-it note, right? We all love a Post-it note. So it's like buying a new journal, whatever it is, right? Write it down, good, simple, and then cross those things out. We all love a crossed out list, or a ticked Monday, whatever, done thingy right? We all love a crossed out list. So you do that. You break every single task down. And then, like, yes, if there's an earthquake, that's a new one. That's possible. Okay, thank you for that one, Becca. But again, a lot of us went through Sogetan. So I went through my events business, losing people, canceling their events. And so what did I do? It was coming back to it again. Went through COVID with not having my business, literally collapsing 3 times. So what did I do? I started again. And I think, I'm going to say this, how do you explain Israelis to people, right? How do you explain that we can go from Yom HaZikaron, we can go from Memorial Day to Independence Day within like 2 hours of things, right? And this year was weird, it was different. But how do you go from being so sad to being so happy and praying and just partying and going out and doing all these things? I was like, because we're resilient. If you want to say anything about us, we're resilient. We know, we get up, we brush ourselves off. There's a terrorist attack. Okay, great. All right, keep going. Like, we just keep going. There is no stopping us, right? Yes, October 7th, I think for all of us was this, like, I want to say pie in the face, but very much like this wake up call, right? There's been so much animosity in this country. There was so much hatred. And I'm not saying it's all gone, but I do think that a lot of us, right, we're all much more on the page. Maybe now a little not so much, but let's just hope we can get back there. But it was like, in the sense of, we are so resilient, right? So if those things happen, it's okay, because we'll just get up and keep going.
One of the things about that keep going mentality, at least since the pandemic, the phrase has been return to routine.
Yeah.
Israelis are obsessed that we have to get back to normal. I found that to be actually very stressful throughout the war. What is normal? How do we get there? And I'm curious for your clients and for yourself, how did that pressure play out in the businesses?
I don't call it the normal because I don't think there is normal anymore. And I actually don't think when everyone says, oh, I'm normal, I'm like, what does that actually mean? Is anyone actually normal? Because I don't think anyone's actually normal, right? But I think it's Israelis like, yes, we have to get back to normal. But even there, it's not really normal. You have people doing jobs for 3 people because half of their office is in Miluim, right? So I don't even think they're saying it. But again, it's not it's not the normal that we had prior to 4 years ago. Even post-COVID wasn't normal, right? There were certain things that came back quite quickly, but we all still have issues from COVID. We all know what it's lockdown. We're all sitting there going, it'd be really nice to have a lockdown. It'd be so nice to just be able to not have to go anywhere and have to talk to anyone. Oh my God, we all say it, but it's still there. Those emotions are still there. So it's this, I don't think I think that's the problem is we create stress because we have to get back to normal. But no, we have to create our own normal. We have to create the new normal.
How are female business owners being supported nationally at the government level?
Not at all.
Is there any support or it's just nothing?
If you earned less in October, November, and December, then you got money. It's called the Manak. But that's it. As far as I know, there are no more grants. My accountant hasn't said it. And that's it. You're on your own. It's different to COVID. It's very different. The COVID, we got a lot more grants if you were self-employed. It really comes to, and this is what we saw from the beginning, that it was the community that came together and was like, thank God we didn't rely on the government for a lot of things because it was the community, and it's still the community that is doing things for everyone. Whether it's your husband's going back into Miluim, okay, what can we do to help you? I check with my neighbor, all the time. Do you need me to come help you put the kids to sleep? But it's the community, right? No one's helping her. She has a full-time job. Her husband's not here. She's got 3 kids. What does she do? How does she cope? Right? There's no, I have a friend who sends a meal every week, every couple of weeks to a Miluim family. I don't even actually think he's Miluim. I think he's 22 when he's in the army and he hasn't been home, because he's just been home very little. So she gives a meal every 2 weeks. So it's the community. So no, the government, I think, gave in the beginning, and that's it. And there's a lot going on in the government right now.
Has the community stepped up for business owners, specifically female ones?
I think we all stepped up for ourselves. All these different groups popped up and had, created websites like support an Israeli business. Now, here's my thing about support an Israeli business. If you're a product, then people are going to buy from you, right? If you're selling challah covers, if you're doing clay, if you're anything like that, even welcome packages or chocolates or whatever that, people are going to buy from you because you're a product, right? They're getting something. Service industries, not the same, right? So all those people who are like, we want to support Israel, we want to buy Israel. Okay, hire an Israeli business coach, right? Hire, if a photographer's coming to the States because she needs to earn money, then hire her. I'm not saying that you should hire someone over someone else, but service industries are not products. We're not giving you something, right? In my opinion, I'm giving you a lot if you come to me to work with me, but it's not the same as the website that created, buy Israel, and all these influencers were sharing this person and this person and this person, and you should buy this. And in some cases, that's amazing. And I'm so happy because they're my clients as well, right? Product-based clients. But I have a lot of clients who are service-based clients, and they're not getting, no one's booking them, right? My graphic designer who could work for someone in America, a law firm in America, right? Because that's one of her ideal clients. She's not necessarily getting calls. We have to network, right? We're all networking. But when people say buy Israel, they're meaning products. And so the service people get pushed to the side a little bit.
How dire is that issue in the service industry? Because we just had on this show, the last episode, a tour guide who specifically was advocating for people to hire tour guides in Israel if you're doing a tour. Don't just go on your own, bring a tour guide, support Israelis. How dire is the situation for the service industry?
If you're self-employed, there was no money from the government this time. So like COVID, we got money. In this case, we got no money. We got very, very little grants. And so it's dire, right? Listen, thank God, most of us have learned to market, and Israelis are purchasing, right? We purchase our own and we hire our own. So it's not like, okay, I don't have business. No, I have clients and I have new clients all the time and I have sales calls or I call them clarity calls. But, it's that concept of, okay, buy Israel. Well, what about working with Israel? Right? It's like, it's the same thing in some ways, but people forget about that part.
Why do you think people forget about it?
Because it's much easier to buy a product than it is to hire a service. Like, listen, it's hard for a photographer who's in Israel to get hired, but you know what? Book, and give a deposit. Book. Okay, you don't think you're coming this year? Okay, fine. Book for 2024-5 and give a deposit. That deposit's going to allow her to go get her hair done. You know what I mean?
Or buy groceries.
Or buy groceries, right? Right, exactly. Or pay rent. So even if it's, and I said this during COVID, the same thing, like, you will come back to Israel, right? So book something, get a deposit into their bank account. That means so much to them.
The war has most definitely led to loss of business. And that, coupled with years of pandemic, now a war, people are dealing with a lot in terms of their mental health. And you spoke very openly about your mental health. Yep. So how are business owners doing, keeping themselves going in terms of having a healthy mental health?
Thank God BetterHelp was giving free therapy for 6 months. So I think a lot of us took advantage of that. I do believe in therapy. I think the support of each other. I think we all checked in with each other, even more than COVID. There was this like, how are you doing? What can I do to help? Are you all right? Like, what can I do for you? Let's just go out for lunch. Like, things like that. Just checking in. That's huge for mental health. It's just having the support. Don't be embarrassed to be on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. It's really normal. And I think right now, I don't advocate for it, but like, I was going to come off it and I'm like, no, we're just going to stay on it a little longer. It just like kind of just, evens things out. And it does wonders. But I think it's just talk about it. Let's talk about it. I think we've all been through so much and we need to talk about it. It's like the thought of going back to Toronto for Pesach and being in that environment and not being here was really, like, the thought of it. I was like, nah, I'm not ready. I think in August I'd be ready. Like, I'm ready. It'll be a year that I've been here. But it's like, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about, like, when the sirens went in the Merkaz again in the center of town this Sunday, it was like, whoa, we're not done. And we're seeing a lot being affected also now. And in some ways, I always say is like, we're on the periphery of the war. Like, we hear the jets and we hear them all the time, but we're not in it. Like, you were in it because your husband was away, right? But there are some of us who, like, my neighbors' husbands were away, right? I went to funerals, I went to Shivas, but it's periphery, right? It's going down in Gaza. It's going up north, right? Like, I'm checking on my uncle who lives in the Golan. So he, when Iran decided to send everything, it's like, yeah, they just went all over our heads, which was crazy. He's like, he saw everything going over, which is like nuts. But it's talk when you're not, when it's too much. Like, I'll pick up the phone and call. I'm like, I can't get off my couch today.
From the women that you're working with and your own personal journey, how do you see Israeli society changing during the war?
People were just nice. Like, we just checked in on each other. And then we went back to the new normal of beeping and having to get there. It was like so nice. There wasn't so much traffic. Like, you used to like drive in, there was like no traffic. It was like the greatest thing on the planet. And then we got back to the new normal, as I call it. And I think the difference was, and I heard this somewhere, and then I actually realized I was experiencing, and you are a prime example of that, in the sense that your husband went to Miluim. You are a Canadian, immigrant You've been here for how long now?
8 years.
8 years, right. And all of a sudden, you were a Miluim wife. You were a reservist wife. Your husband was gone for 3 months. You were just like the rest of the country. There is no differences between people who immigrated and people who grew up here. We're all in this together.
The final question that I ask every guest is, what is giving you hope today?
People. Listen, it's not easy right now to watch the news, and the hate that we had before October 7th is come back a little bit, and it's really hard to watch. Because I thought we grew from it, and I don't know if we really did. But I watch the next generation, the kids, and they just get on with life, and they smile, and they dance, and they're happy, and there's hope in that. We have survived so many different things. We have survived pogroms, we have survived war, we have survived a Holocaust, we have survived being sent out of this country and this country and this country, and they can't get rid of us, right? We keep going, and that's the hope. And you watch another friend have a baby here, and another friend build her life here, and you see your friends' kids graduating high school and going into the army, and we just keep going. That's the hope. We just keep going. It's people.
Michal, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Naomi Studios, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you want to support the people of Israel, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Follow the Homefront Podcast online for more updates, and we'll see you in the next episode.